It's Monday the 11th of May across Greater Manchester. This is Channel M's Lunchtime News and these are today's headlines. A teenager is shot dead outside a pub in Stretford.
I just heard a really loud noise. It sounded like, well, it was loud enough to make me jump out my skin. Just pretty much decided not to look out.
Also coming up, Gordon Brown says sorry as the row over MP's expenses intensifies.
We're going to get to a stage where nobody wants to come into politics, I think, because, you know, the reputation of MPs has been so tarnished, and I think it is necessary to say sorry.
Plus, church leaders from both sides of the Atlantic remember the Manchester bombing.
Manchester is a diverse city. It's a city that has reinvented itself, as we very well know. We're a very resilient city.
Good afternoon. Our main headline, a 16-year-old boy is being killed in a shooting in Stretford. Giuseppe Gregory was shot at last night in the first such case in more than a year. With the latest from the scene, here's Kevin Duffy.
Yes, thanks. Now, as you can see, large parts of Urmston Lane in Stretford are cordoned off and the associated side roads. And that's all because of what happened here last night. We understand that about 10 to midnight, police were called to this area just beside the Robin Hood pub after reports that gunshots had been fired. Now, at about the same time, we understand that a boy was being driven to Trafford General Hospital in a car, and he is understood to have had gunshot wounds to the head. Shortly after that, it was confirmed that the 16-year-old boy had in fact died as a result of those gunshot wounds. 68-year-old Demetrius Voliodis lives opposite the pub. He heard the disturbance. How many shots did you hear?
3, and after another 2.
Are you sure of that?
I hear another bang. Well, 3 shots, bang, 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 and after that it's, you know, I hear another one.
Catherine Blackburn's home is next to the car park where it's believed the fatal shots were fired.
I just heard a really loud noise. It sounded like, well, it was loud enough to make me jump out my skin, and I was sat in the living room here and just pretty much decided not to look out. Thought it was a firework, actually. Made my mind up that it was a firework, and that's what it sounded more like, to be honest.
Now, Greater Manchester Police say that they have arrested 3 people, an 18-year-old, a 20-year-old and a 22-year-old, and they've arrested those 3 men on suspicion of murder, and they remain in custody. But at the moment, this is still very much an ongoing investigation. Back to you.
Thanks, Kevin. A policeman's appeared in court accused of murdering his fiancée, who was also a police officer in Rochdale. PC Claire Howarth died from serious head injuries after being found in a crashed vehicle near Harwood in Bury last Thursday morning. Martin Forshaw, who's 26 and from Tottington, has appeared before magistrate. He's been remanded in custody till his next appearance in a week's time. A man's threatened to rape a young girl walking home from a fair in Gorton. The 12-year-old was near the Mecca Bingo on Hyde Road on Saturday evening when she was approached from behind. Her attacker said he'd rape her if she didn't go with him. She ran off to find friends and the offender also then ran away. 3 men have been arrested after a high-speed police chase over the weekend that started in Cheetham Hill. Police pursued a Nissan Micra along Bury New Road after the driver refused to stop. The car then made its way along the M60 before leaving the motorway and crashing into the police car after finding itself at a dead end. Gordon Brown has said sorry on behalf of all MPs from all parties over the row about their expenses. The Prime Minister says it's necessary to get back the public's trust after days of newspaper headlines about it. He says where wrongs have come to light, they should be addressed immediately. Children's Minister Beverley Hughes told me earlier that it's right to apologise.
I think just to say things are in the rules, clearly when people have claimed for things that are very, very hard to justify is just not sufficient. And I think many of us feel really quite angry that, you know, obviously it tars everybody with the same brush.
More of that interview in a few moments. Those comments come as the focus of headlines on MPs' expenses switches to the Tories. Expenses claims by several senior Conservatives have been printed in today's papers. Among them, it's claimed Alan Duncan spent £4,000 on gardening, including repairing a sit-on lawnmower. David Willits needed workmen to fit 25 new bulbs for him at a cost of £100. James Gray tried to claim for £60 of wreaths for Remembrance Day services, and Oliver Letwin said to have asked for £2,000 £80,000 to repair a leaking pipe under a tennis court. Over the weekend, there were difficult headlines for Salford MP and Community Secretary Hazel Blears, who it claimed escaped paying £18,000 in tax when selling a flat in London. Georgia Calvin-Smith has more on this.
Over the years, and as it suited her purpose, Hazel Blear's home here in Salford has been named as both being her main residence and her second home. But this latest controversy centres around the sale of her London flat back in 2004, on which she made a £45,000 profit, but didn't have to pay almost £18,000 of capital gains tax. That's because although she'd been enjoying the benefit of having registered the London flat as being her second home under Commons rules, she'd actually told the taxman that it was her main residence and therefore didn't have to pay capital gains tax on profits resulting from its sale. Now, although Hazel Blears may not technically have broken any rules, the fact that she's cleverly played the system to her advantage has left a bad taste in people's mouths.
Why can't we have free houses and get everything like that by? Why can they do it and we can't?
It's not right, is it? It's outrageous, really, but rules need changing, don't they?
Well, I think I've made it really clear that I absolutely understand how the public feel. I think the public hate the whole system. I think the system needs to be changed. The rules are clearly wrong, and that's why we need to get on with that as quickly as possible. As far as my own situation is concerned, I have complied with the rules of the House authorities. I've complied with the rules of the Inland Revenue. I was required to designate my main home as my London home, actually by the Fees Office, and I actually had a battle to try and get Salford designated as my main home because that's where I live. So as far as I'm concerned, I've complied fully, but I do entirely understand that the public are pretty outraged at the things that they've been hearing over the last few weeks. That's bad for politics. That's why we need to change the system.
Miss Blair's apparent call for change is at odds with her previous willingness to take advantage of the rules, but she's not the only Greater Manchester MP to have questions raised about their parliamentary expenses claims. Immigration Minister and Oldham East and Saddleworth MP Phil Willis has denied suggestions that he'd recoup the cost of impermissible items, including alcohol and women's clothing. Georgia Calvin-Smith, Channel M News.
Thanks, Georgia. Well, on this morning's breakfast show, I spoke to the Children's Minister, Beverley Hughes, and she told me she thinks it is right that MPs should say sorry.
People who've made reasonable and proportionate expense claims, their claims aren't being published, understandably. But we all get tarred with that, and I think it does a great disservice, not just to MPs, but to politics generally. You know, we're going to get to a stage where nobody wants to come into politics, I think, because, you know, the reputation of MPs has been so tarnished, and I think it is necessary to say sorry.
Some of the reporting of this in the papers, it's almost seemed as though the papers are saying that some MPs have been pretty much milking the system for as much as they can. Is that the case, or is that unfair the way it's been presented?
Well, I think, you know, everybody who's been accused of making claims that aren't really justified has got to answer for themselves, and I'm not going to answer for them. I think, you know, it's right that the public know about this, however that came about. And I think now the system absolutely needs to be fundamentally changed, doesn't it? And with a real transparency and rigour in the way that it's implemented. And where do you think we go from here to try to rebuild confidence in whatever system does replace this? I think we've got to come forward with some proposals that are going to be made by the Independent Commission under Sir Christopher Kelly. And I'm sure that the government will accept whatever recommendations he makes. And I think because they'll be made by an independent person of some stature, I hope then we can draw a line under this, set up a system that conforms with those proposals and move on. But I think we've got a lot to do as MPs, really, to rebuild public confidence. A report's out claiming that bringing in congestion charging on our roads would help save millions of pounds for UK businesses. The CBI and the Freight Transport Association says such a plan would not only stop the roads being too busy, but also improve the economy. The claim comes as Greater Manchester Council's put forward their so-called Plan B after last year's no vote in the referendum on bringing in such a charge here. A school for children with special needs which is facing closure has been recognised nationally for its high standards. The Lancasterian School in West Didsbury has been congratulated for helping youngsters develop their communication skills. Education bosses plan to take pupils out of there and put them into mainstream schools instead.
A senior church leader from America's arrived here to see how the city recovered from the IRA bombing. The Dean of New York's visiting after a visit over there last September by his counterpart from Manchester. They both say the cities have a common bond, having suffered at the hands of fundamentalists. Beverley Hughes is on this.
13th of June 1996, and a huge explosion rocks central Manchester at around 11:20 a.m. Corporation Street and the Arndale Centre are destroyed. Today, the Dean of New York was in Manchester to see how the city has evolved since that devastating day.
Decided to come to Manchester really because we're intrigued by the stories of these two great cities that have gone through various kinds of challenges. Some of them challenges by terrorism, some of them challenges that are economic. We've got what we think are great cathedrals in great cities, and we're trying to learn from each other and those cities about how we can be even more directly involved as part of the heart and soul of these cities.
The whole idea is that having had bombs in both of our cities, and the 9/11 sort of tragedy in America, in New York, and the bombing here in Manchester, and the way both our communities have been affected by it. Obviously, the New York bombing was far worse, with so many lives being lost. Somehow there is this commonality, this common pain that both cities have suffered.
It will be 13 years this June since the IRA bomb went off in this part of Manchester. These whole buildings were completely demolished. Everything around here was rubble, except for this post box, which still stands today as a symbol of our resilience against terrorism.
I think that's a kind of parable of its own, on its own, really. Just now, when we were chatting, I saw a young lady come and post a letter in the box. And that says something symbolic as well to me of today, the living sort of aftermath of what the terrorists, the IRA sort of terrorists were intending to do, to kill off the kind of stuff of life.
It seems both cities share the same gritty determination to survive. Beverley Hughes for Channel M News.
Protests have taken place against a series of anti-terror raids in Cheetham Hill last month that resulted in 12 men being arrested and later released without charge. Some of their supporters gathered outside Strangeways jail, where they're being held before being deported back to Pakistan, and at a meeting in Longsight as well. More demonstrations are planned for later this week by campaigners who say they're against the criminalisation and harassment of Muslims. Veterans from World War II, along with their families, have staged a moving ceremony to remember those who lost their lives during the conflict. It was held in St Peter's Square to mark the anniversary of VE Day, when fighting in Europe ended.
The Russians celebrate the end of the war not on the 8th of May, which used to be the VE Day here, but on the 9th of May. And in Soviet times, there were huge parades in Red Square and so on to celebrate it. Now it has become a more thoughtful ceremony in a way, because the Russians suffered terrible losses in that war. So the ceremony is partly rejoicing at victory, but it's mainly now a remembrance of the sacrifices which that victory required.
Let's take a look at the lunchtime sports headlines now, with a look back at that big Manchester derby. Here's Ian Irving.
Thanks, James. Well, goals from Cristiano Ronaldo and Carlos Tevez earned Manchester United a comfortable 2-0 derby victory against Manchester City yesterday, a result which means United could clinch their third consecutive league crown on Saturday against Arsenal. And we'll have highlights from yesterday's game in our news bulletin from 5 o'clock. Bury and Rochdale saw their dreams of League One football shattered in yesterday's playoff semi-final second legs. Dale lost 2-1 at Gillingham, while Bury went down 4-3 on penalties against 10-man Shrewsbury.
I think enjoy the occasion and enjoy being here, and I think learn from the loss and disappointment, because I have to say football, whether you're a manager or a player, is about disappointment. There's very more disappointment than highs, and so you have to get over it and be really resilient, and I'm hopeful that my players will be exactly that.
It's harsh, very, very harsh when you're 9 points better off than them in a season of 46 games, but that's what the money people want to do for us, so that's the way we have to do it. But I thought we did enough today to win it. Maybe didn't do enough to win it on Thursday, so it evens itself up. All the best to Shrewsbury.
And there was heartbreak for Glossop North End as well in their FA Vars final against Whitley Bay at Wembley yesterday, although the Hillman's blow was softened by their runners-up cheque for £27,000.
Rick Bailey. Not quite. And Picton can just pick it up and find his man. It's an attempt to try and lob it over the goalkeeper. It's a save and it's onto the crossbar. Well, how about that? What a goal that would have been. Over the top from Moore to find Paul Chow up against Danny Yates. Still got it, Chow. Kurt. Leaker's done really well here to find the space to score for Whitley Bay. The opening goal in this 2009 FA Vars final. And Leaker all on his own. In towards Hamilton. Real chance. Brilliant block by Picton. Don't know how much he knew of it. And look at this, Johnston. Here's Paul Chow. It's 2-0. From one end to the other. And Whitley Bay's afternoon is just getting better and better.
On to cricket now, and Lancashire's unbeaten start to the season came to an end yesterday. They were beaten by 6 wickets by Essex. At one stage they found themselves at 82 for 8, 44 of which were scored by Ashwell Prince, before reaching 157 all out. But the home side reached the total with ease. In Speedway, Morton Rizea makes his Bellevue Aces home debut against Peterborough this evening, with the Aces looking for revenge, having lost the first leg of the Elite League fixture 54-39 last week. Billy Forsberg, the only team change for the visitors, who misses the next 3 weeks with a broken thumb. And if you fancy going along, the tapes go up at 7:30. The draw for the quarter-finals of the Carnegie Challenge Cup had been made, and the pick of the ties for the area was 17-time Cup winners Wigan being drawn against the Salford City Reds. All the ties will be played over the weekend of May the 29th to the 31st. And some football rumours to finish. Stockport County striker Ollie Johnson is reportedly a target for Fulham boss Roy Hodgson. Spurs, along with Chelsea, Real Madrid and Manchester City, are all in contention to sign United's Carlos Tevez, should he decide to leave Old Trafford. And City are also rumoured to be preparing an £18 million bid for Liverpool's Xabi Alonso. Well, that's all your sport for now, but back to James, who'll tell you what's coming up in part 2.
Ian, thanks very much for the update. There's much more still to come on Monday's programme, including the new high-tech tools being given to Greater Manchester's police and the football team, hoping for cup glory in memory of their friend who was shot dead.
This is what it's about for him, you know, and all of his mates here as well. All the lads he went to primary school with playing football. Unbelievable.
This is Monday's Lunchtime News. Welcome back. Don't forget you can go online to channelm.co.uk to see this programme again, or watch any of our other reports too. On there right now, the report claiming we're not doing enough to stop children being injured on our roads, and a former soldier who was hailed a hero in the UEFA Cup riots last year has been discredited in court. That's at channelm.co.uk. Next, it's the biggest change for the police since radios were introduced. That's how one officer at Greater Manchester Police has described the latest technology revolution for the force. All frontline officers will get handheld computers so they can spend more time out and about rather than at the station, as Ben Bland explains.
Ask people what they want from the police and you'll often get the reply, more bobbies on the beat. And that's the idea behind this £10 million project. All frontline officers will get handheld computers or Blackberries like this, so they can complete paperwork electronically while they're out and about, instead of going back to the station. They'll also receive briefings and pictures of suspects by email. Patrol cars will get touchscreen computers and broadband internet access. That means they'll be able to check licence plates in seconds. Some officers will also be able to view any of the 350 CCTV cameras across Greater Manchester from their response cars. All the computers will be tracked so control room staff know where all police are at any given time, making it easier to deploy units to scenes of crime. The first Blackberries have been trialled by neighbourhood officers in Tameside and Trafford. The rest of the 800 across Greater Manchester will be kitted out over the next 12 months. However, it doesn't come cheap, at a cost of £10 million.
No, it doesn't, but of course it will be over a period of 3 to 4 years. It also includes infrastructure. Of course, it isn't £8 million just for the handheld computers. The infrastructure has to be installed. But this fits in perfectly with Greater Manchester Police Authority's view that policing and reducing bureaucracy and efficient policing and effective policing are our duty, and that's what we intend to deliver.
A football team that was formed in memory of gun crime victim Halton McCollin has missed out on the chance of cup glory in Flixton. Halton Juniors have been beaten by Clayton Bridge in the Old John Cup. Friends of the 20-year-old, who was shot dead outside a takeaway in Old Trafford in what was believed to be a case of mistaken identity, wanted to create something positive from his death. We caught up with them before kick-off.
This is absolutely fantastic, because this is what it's about for him, you know. And all of his mates here as well. All the lads he went to primary school with playing football. Unbelievable. They've done so well. First season, they were in 2 finals, knocked out the third in the semis, 1 point off for promotion. There's nothing to do. All they need to do, go out, equip themselves really well today, show people what they're about. Anything after that's a bonus.
We didn't expect to get to the final, to be honest. It's just because of Halton, really. So lucky that we've done it in our first season, so just got to do the best we can today.
Some of Bury's most famous faces will be at a ceremony later to give them the freedom of the borough. Radcliffe-born film director Danny Boyle will lead the line-up at the celebration, along with Paralympian Zoe Robinson. The rock band Elbow will also be there at a special meeting of the council to recognise their achievements. A schoolgirl from Poynton's come forward to claim ownership of a balloon which travelled thousands of miles from Stockport to Istanbul. It was released to mark World Book Day from a shop in Bramall and ended up on a Turkish farm. 8-year-old Victoria Ambrosino will now get a goodie bag and the chance to meet her favourite author after coming forward to say it was hers. The sun's been out for most of the morning across Greater Manchester. Michelle Eagleton's here now with the weather to see how the rest of the week's looking.
An absolutely gorgeous day right across Greater Manchester. Plenty of sunshine and remaining dry throughout. Now, highs of between 14 and 16 are expected for most of us. That's going to continue into this evening. Really dry tonight, although temperatures dropping slightly down to 5 degrees, so pretty chilly overnight. Although tomorrow really is the same picture as today, so that's great news if you're doing anything for Tuesday. Again, it's going to be dry and full of sunshine. Make the most of it, because as you can see, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday are a bit of a washout, especially on Friday with some heavy cloud.
This is Channel 11 update now on our top stories. Police say the murder of a 16-year-old boy in Stretford may have been gang-related. Giuseppe Gregory was fatally shot near the Robin Hood pub shortly before midnight. 3 men aged between 18 and 22 have been arrested. We also understand the victim previously survived being shot when he was 13. We'll have much more on that and the rest of the day's main headlines with Andy Crane in our early evening news from 5 o'clock tonight. Do join him for that, but from me and the rest of the Lunchtime team here, have a very good afternoon. Bye-bye for now.